Welcome to the tales of the macabre and bizarre,
where the lights are fake and the marshmallows are free. This is our first episode, guys, so welcome. In this episode, in this series, what we're going to be doing is going through a lot of creepypastas, a lot of folklore, urban legends.
While doing our research of different stories that we wanted to do, we came across a few of them that we thought were going to be really good, but one stuck out more than the other, which is the story of the Screaming Bridge, which takes place in Arlington, Texas. So the Screaming Bridge is actually a prominent urban myth that takes place in North Texas. This story has been told a lot to the youth of Arlington and has kind of been passed down through the generations. It's actually become a rite of passage for many Arlington teens to actually go to said location and try to hear the screams. Now, you will understand more once we elaborate on the story. A lot of Arlington teenagers and some adults will continuously go to this bridge because the story goes that many teenagers were in a car and it crashed off of the bridge. So they go there almost as like a test of strength or like bravery to see how long they can stay there and to see if they'll actually hear these spirits that have passed on at the bridge. So going into more of the specifics is that a lot of websites and paranormal investigators and people like that have gone to the bridge, and each and every single one of them has actually had an experience and a different story to tell on the things that they've seen or heard there. So we're not going to be getting into that too much because it's a lot of different things. So, on the night of February 4th, 1961, a car filled with 6 teenagers plunged off of a burned out bridge. Now, upon doing more investigation, the Arlington Fire Department that was there did research and actually suspected of arson, and that's the reason why the bridge was burned out. So the girls were driving towards the bridge after going and seeing a movie, and when they were approaching the bridge, it was very late at night and it was not well lit. So they went off the bridge at 45 miles an hour that ran along next to a train track. And upon impact, 2 were killed and the others were taken to the hospital. Now, another one died at the hospital, which resulted in the 3rd death, and the other 2 were very critically injured with fractures and concussions, and one was even rushed to emergency brain surgery. After doing more research about who these young girls were, we found out their names. Now, the 2 that were instantly killed were Mary Lou Goldner, who at the time was 16, and Claudine Jean Reeves, who was 17. And the 3rd that arrived dead at the hospital upon getting there was actually Kathy Fleming. The 3 that were injured were Donna Post, Dorothy Ibsen, and Joanne Anderson that were at the hospital. Joanne Anderson is the one that required critical emergency brain surgery, and they had no idea who these young girls were because at the time they were not carrying identification. So the names were only found out who these girls were, including the ones that had died, after Dorothy Ibsen regained consciousness long enough to tell her parents' names and the names of her friends, of the girls that were with her in the car. On the night of the accident, there was said to be a young man whose name was Bill Young, and he had stopped to let a train cross. It says that he tried to honk his horn to get their attention, which could have it's difficult to say because it could have either scared them more into thinking that there was another car behind them or another car near them, and resulted in them perhaps speeding up, because their speed when going off of the bridge was 45 miles an hour, which is not the typical speed that you would be going on such a tiny road. So newspaper articles on February 6th, which was earlier that morning, the headline read "Death Bridge Involved in Probe," which is where we found the information of Bill Young and his statement saying that he was trying to warn the girls and help them and try to prevent them from going off the bridge. As we did even more research, we found out that the bridge in question that was burned out, that was suspected of arson, was burned down 2 years prior and was rebuilt after it had burned down 2 years ago, and then it burned down again, which then led the fire department to realize that it was arson, especially after finding straw and old lit matches. According to the fire marshal that was actually looking into everything, they had put up barricades after they had found out that the bridge had been set fire to, except the barriers had mysteriously disappeared the night of the accident. And this was after police and the fire department decided to put up these wooden barricades because the road flares and smudge pots that were placed there before kept being extinguished. 4 Arlington High School boys were indicted and brought before a grand jury, which declined to bring charges, reported as of February 17th. These 4 boys being Clinton Veers, Tracy Stanley, Ronald Maximore, and Richard Truett Rivers. The boys' attorneys said that their clients were driving on Arlington Bedford Road on January 27, 1961, a night of heavy snowfall, whenever they stopped, and suggested setting fire to the bridge. Some say in order to impede the travel of the predominantly black community of Mosser Valley into North Arlington. After further investigation on the police department's part, it never revealed who was responsible for removing the barricades and road flares from the burned out bridge. No one ever stepped forward with information. Neither did anyone come forward basically confessing to removing the barriers or the road flares. And the police department even offered a reward for any information that was brought to them, and the reward was never claimed because nobody had any information on who did it or how it happened. On March 10th, 1994, Raylan Jostin and Tammy Lynn Dodson tried to outrace an oncoming train, which impacted the passenger side of their truck. One of the occupants was knocked out of the vehicle while the other remained trapped inside of the burning vehicle. Both women died on the scene. After the 1994 accident, the stretch of what was now known as Greenbelt Road was closed to all traffic. With its closing, the myth of the Screaming Bridge moved to a nearby bridge spanning the Trinity River at the end of an abandoned road, which parallels with the river. This closed and barricaded bridge has been featured in some stories and online videos, being the location of the Screaming Bridge. The original bridge is no longer accessible to the public, which is probably a good thing, with just how the road was set up and how the bridge was set up and everything that had occurred there with the multiple deaths. It's extremely hard to get to now, which obviously makes it all the more interesting for young teens to be dared to go and see if they can hear the screams of the spirits that were there.
And to think, like, all that could have been prevented if there wasn't segregation at the time. You know, preventing blacks from the other parts of Texas that come into their town and everything, and that's the extremes that they took to do it. That's just...
So, because 4 young teens decided that they wanted to prevent African American people from passing through their community, 6 or 3 out of the 6 young girls lost their lives in a horrible accident due to their actions.
With this story that we just talked about, is it real or is it fake?
After we read the story, we really wanted to look into it more, and then that's whenever we found out all of the information that we did. I did my own research, and so did Scotty, and we kind of put it together and like went through all of the information, and we can definitely say that this is a real story and that this really occurred and that these events did happen in our history, which is terrifying in itself to realize that things like this do happen and they're not all just ghost stories.
Yeah.
So whether you can hear the screams of the people at the bridge, we don't know. We haven't been there. Would we go?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hope you guys like this story. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Pass this around because you know everybody likes a good story anyway. So
yeah.
And with that, we'll say good night on this one, and we'll see you guys on the next story.
Yep. Bye.